2 hours of research wasted. Good morning and happy Monday to you. How's your guys' weekend? Did you work this weekend because you wanted to get a jump on Monday? Did you spend 2 hours on a task where you thought you were done, but it turned out that you needed to start over? Because that's what I did. Every weekend, I try and do research for these Monday morning videos. This time, I stayed up super late on a Saturday to get it all written out. And then, Sunday, I watched this.
This is not an economy that's in recession.
What the f***? That is a bold statement, Treasury Secretary. If you've been watching my videos, then you know that since the first week of May, I've been saying that we are in a recession. The reason why I changed my video, though, for this Monday at least, is because I wanted you guys to see how inadequate and how deceitful our government can be. Roll the tape.
So let's dig into it. Joining me now is the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen. Secretary Yellen, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Let me just start with this. Many businesses seem to be preparing for a recession. Should all Americans at home be preparing for for a recession that many people think now is likely?
Good question. She then begins to bloviate until she finally says this.
This is not an economy that's in recession.
Wow, I was not expecting that. And after more bloviating, Chuck Todd challenged her just a bit.
You seem pretty optimistic, it sounds like, from that answer, that we're going to avoid a recession, but I want to throw in two data points that you didn't bring up. One was these reports on Friday about both in the Euro space and in the United States, that we've seen some contraction of business activity. Throw in the uptick of unemployment, the weekly unemployment number there. Is that not the first sign of a coming recession, even if it's a mild one?
To which she replies,
But I don't think that that's a recession.
Then a bunch more bloviating. Talking just to take up time. Watch the full interview for yourself. The more time she takes explaining one question takes off two other questions she might have had to answer. This is a common game in TV politics. Finally, Chuck gets to ask her another question. Here it is.
Help us play armchair economist this week. There is a ton of data coming out this week. It's probably a fun week for an economist because we're going to have consumer confidence survey, the second quarter GDP numbers. We got inflation numbers for June. Which is the indicator? What's the number you're most focused on that will give you a better indication of where this economy is headed?
Great question again. Drum roll, please.
Well, I look at all the data, and GDP will be closely watched. A common definition of recession is 2 negative quarters of GDP growth, or at least that's something that's been true in past recessions. When we've seen that, there has usually been a recession. And many economists expect second quarter GDP to be negative. First quarter GDP was negative. So we could see that happen, and that will be closely watched. But I do want to emphasize what a recession really means is a broad-based contraction in the economy. And even if that number is negative, we are not in a recession now. There's an organization called the National Bureau of Economic Research that looks at a broad range of data in deciding whether or not there is a recession.
When someone says broad-based, that is terms for saying it can be an array of things. You know, broad. And she continues.
Not characterizing that as a recession.
I understand that, but you're splitting hairs. I mean, if the technical definition is 2 quarters of contraction, you're saying that's not a recession?
That's not
No?
That's not the technical definition.
Hold on. When I Google technical recession, the very first paragraph that comes up states, the U.S. economy unexpectedly shrank 1.6% in the first quarter as the Omicron variant fueled a record surge in COVID cases. So another negative quarter would indicate the nation has slipped into a technical recession, which is defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Okay, I scroll down a little bit more just to read, how is a technical recession different from a recession? When a recessionary phase sustains for a considerable length of time, it is known as a recession. A technical recession is when a country faces a back-to-back decline for 2 consecutive quarters in GDP. So now the government is trying to change definitions that we've been using forever to fit their narrative. Meaning 6 months or 2 negative quarters of GDP is no longer the administration's definition of a technical recession. Don't believe what I'm saying? How about going ahead and doing a web search for Investopedia.com, what is a recession? And they state a recession is a macroeconomic term that refers to a significant decline in general economic activity in a designated region. It had been typically recognized, now pay attention, it says it had been typically recognized as 2 consecutive quarters of economic decline as reflected by GDP in conjunction with monthly indicators such as a rise in unemployment. However, the National Bureau of Economic Research, the organization that Janet Yellen wants us to use, NUBER. So NUBER, which officially declares recessions, how convenient, they say that the two consecutive quarters of decline in real GDP are not how it is defined anymore. Which means that was the definition. It goes on to say that the NUBER defines a recession as a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy lasting more than a few months, normally visible in real GDP, real income, unemployment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Let's go over the last sentence, okay? Significant decline in economic activity normally visible in real GDP. How about 6 months of negative GDP? Is that good enough? Real income. Has anyone felt what the inflation? Industrial production. All indicators show that industrial work is down. Wholesale retail sales, I do believe that was actually up by 1%. This video is already too long and I'm not going to do some more research to find out and double check. So when was this article updated, you ask? March 25th, 2022. Just a couple of months ago. Do you need more proof? If so, go to whitehouse.gov. It says the following with regards to recession. What is a recession? While some maintain that 2 consecutive quarters of falling real GDP constitute a recession, that is neither the official definition nor the way economists evaluate the state of the business cycle. It's not? Since when? Well, according to this blog post from the White House itself, it was updated on July 21st, 2022. Just in time to fit the narrative that despite anything anyone says on June 29th, with updated economic numbers, you could not call 6 months of negative GDP a recession any longer. Because it's broad. Why do I bring this up? Because we're supposed to look at these people as educators. They're supposed to tell us the truth as to what is happening. Instead, they are rewriting the rules to make themselves look competent. Reminds me of when, right before Putin invaded Ukraine, he explained to the Russian people the history between the two countries. And that was that is why they needed to save Ukraine from itself. The problem was the history that he talked about, it never happened. It was made up to fit his narrative so that he could invade. Just like this government is now changing definitions and expectations that we've used forever just so that they can fit their narrative. The government thinks we're stupid. How do I know this? Because of the way that they're treating us, telling us lies cloaked in what they call truth. Man, I would just love a government that would just take personal responsibility for what's happening. Hell, if you actually listened to last week's video, I didn't even blame Biden for this economy. This economy might have gone bad regardless of who was president. But now you're lying to me. Now, since I can't trust you, I will most definitely also need to blame you. You are your own worst enemy, Biden. And yes, I'm saying Biden because he is the man at the helm. Now, instead of 2 hours, folks, let's add an additional 4. Hopefully you found this information interesting. Hopefully I didn't turn too many people off with this content. And regardless of how things pan out, please always remember, life's not meant to be, it's meant to create. Too strong.